This is the Executive Committee of SANDAG, and it's Friday, March 12, 2021. Do we have any non-agenda public comments?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to wait to hear Hassan's Executive Director report at our board meeting. So we will move on to the consent calendar now. Do we have any questions or comments on the consent calendar?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Mayor Voss and a second by Mayor Gloria.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I apologize. Everyone came in right before the meeting started, so I'm still confirming attendance as we go here. But for the City of San Diego, Mayor Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson-Remer or Supervisor Anderson, are you on the line?
Yes, Supervisor Lawson-Remer is here. Aye.
Thank you very much. For East County, Mayor Vasquez? Or Mayor Minto?
Minto, yes.
Thank you very much. For North County Coastal, Chair Blakespear?
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor Voss?
Aye.
Thank you. And for South County, Mayor Salas? Or Mayor Dedina? South County is absent. And that does pass.
Dedina.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Our second
Bridge
vice
for
chair.
Dedina, aye.
John, can you please weigh in?
What are you asking him to weigh in on?
My understanding is that the second vice chair is a representative for South County. And so we need a vote from Mayor Sotelo Solis, please.
Solis, aye.
Thank you very much. That does pass unanimously.
Okay, great. So now we're moving on to review of the draft agendas, and we will hand it over to Victoria.
Good morning. On your March 26th Board of Directors meeting, we have item number 1, which is the public comments, followed by item number 2, which is the Executive Director's report. On your consent, you have the standard approval of the meeting minutes, followed by policy advisory committee actions. Item number 5 is the proposed FY21 program budget amendment for the LOSAM program of projects. This is to accept grant program from the state. Item number 6 is the specialized transportation grant program funding recommendations for cycle 11. We're looking for an approve. Item number 7 is the disadvantaged business enterprise disparity study. The board is asked to accept the DBE study from the FTA. Item number 8 is the 2021 Bike Month, and we'll be looking for an adoption of a resolution. Item number 9 is the Criminal Justice Research and Clearinghouse Annual Update. This is information. Item number 10 is your Executive Director Delegated Actions for information, followed by item number 11, which is meeting and events attended on behalf of SANDAG. Under reports, we have item number 12, which is the South Bay Expressway SR 125 information item. We'll be providing an overview, followed by item number 13, which is the draft FY22 program budget, which is on your agenda today, followed by the last item, which is item number 14, information item on the Central Mobility Hub. We'll be providing some information on the project and where we are in the environmental process. That concludes the March 26th Board of Directors agenda.
Okay.
Would you like me to go on to April 9th?
Yes.
On your April 9th agenda, we have item number 1, which is public comments, followed by item number 2, which is the Executive Director's report. On your consent calendar, we have item number 3, which is the approval of meeting minutes, followed by policy advisory committee actions. Item number 5 is the Executive Director Delegated Actions. For your reports, we have 2 reports related to the RTP development. The first one is the 2021 Regional Plan Role of Technology, which will be provided for discussion. And then item number 7 is the Regional Plan Equity considerations, which will also be provided for discussion. That concludes the April 9th Board of Directors meeting.
Okay, do we have any comments on this? I don't
No,
see
Chair,
it.
we don't have any comments.
Okay, and I don't see any hands raised from board members. So I'm looking for a motion and a second.
So move Sotelo Solis.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mayor Sotelo Solis and a second from, I think that was Mayor Gloria.
Thank you very much. For the City of San Diego, Mayor Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Remer.
Aye.
Thank you. For East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Chair Blakespear.
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. And for South County, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you very much. And that passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So now we're moving on to item number 6, which is the draft fiscal year 2022 program budget. Now we'll call on our Executive Director, Hassan.
Thank you, Mayor Blakespear. Good morning, committee members. Since I came to SANDAG, I have been honest with you about our funding situation from day one. I'm not one to paint a rosy picture. Things are tough for all of us, and I'm sure you can relate to that. What I'm telling you today is that SANDAG must keep moving forward, and this is what we need to make that happen. When the board hired me late 2018, it was to transform the agency. The board meant business, and so did I. This was an organization in trouble. Years of underinvestment was showing. You saw the effects of our work and on our reputation. I remember my first SANDAG press conference where I set out a vision for a world-class organization, and I said we must find a way to pay for it. Within my first 90 days, we started a comprehensive organizational assessment. This was a 360-degree look at the agency's effectiveness, inside and out. Based on this work, we started to develop a strategic plan, a roadmap for transformation. Since then, our performance auditor, Mary Kay, has conducted reviews and risk assessment. Our programs have been audited. You will soon hear about the most recent Transnet program audit. You, our board, and the constituents you serve have asked SANDAG to improve. And we can't ignore the impact of COVID-19 and the calls for racial justice and indelible mark these have left on the region. What I have to come to realize is this. Our agency has been running too lean in too many areas for too many years. SANDAG has underinvested in the resources needed to strengthen our programs and practices. It's imperative that we make important changes. These are essential if we are to become a world-class organization. What I briefly shared with you is a look back at where we have been. Where we are today and where we are headed is a different story. And my team right now, I'm gonna hand it to Jim Lethacom to go over with you on the highlights of what would it take to build a world-class organization through our budget. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hassan. You know, we've come a long way over the past 2.5 years. You hear us talk about big data, right? We've embraced it. You know, we've used advanced analytics and we've reimagined the future of transportation. Our new vision for the regional plan, the 5 big moves, it's faster, fairer, and cleaner. And we've used these same analytics to give each jurisdiction detailed reports about where people live and work. You may recall seeing Ray Major's spider diagram that shows that. And, you know, I remember just a few years ago how big data, or excuse me, how very basic our elementary our state of the commute report was. Now, big data is helping us make it much better to help you all make better decisions. So on the legislative front, we got a bill passed to provide us more time to work on our regional plan. We actually got CEQA streamlining legislation passed for the Central Mobility Hub. We received additional funding for the Mid-Coast Corridor. We're working on high-level agreements with the government of Mexico for Otay Mesa East. And we made the Del Mar Bluffs and moving the tracks inland both a statewide and a national priority resulting in commitments of over $100 million for the stabilization. In the finance area, in just the past 15 months, we've gone to Wall Street for 6 new or refinanced funding efforts. In fact, the bankers say that SANDAG is one of the most active issuers in the state. This work has resulted in more than $1.6 billion in proceeds for projects and more than $180 million in debt service savings. I mean, this is real money. In fact, as an aside, as we were preparing for this, we asked Andre how others do this, since we have no dedicated staff to do this type of work. And he found some self-help agencies, large self-help agencies like SANDAG, who have 5 or 6 people dedicated to what they call debt and investment management. And finally, our commitment, most recently, our commitment to equity demonstrates accountability and acknowledges our responsibility to serve everyone in the region. This is not the same SANDAG. We try to be open, honest, and tell it like it is. And as you've observed, we are certainly willing to have difficult conversation. The board's being engaged more frequently, and you are more involved in briefings to help make better and informed decisions. We're trying to be more agile and responsive. And a great example of this is the extensive data analysis and reporting you've received throughout the entire pandemic. This revealed the real impacts to our low-income and minority neighborhoods that no one else was talking about at the time. And at the board meeting later this morning, you'll hear about a data-driven planning and how that data-driven planning is responding to board member questions from last month. However, we've just started, and there's so much more to do to transform the agency into the world-class organization that the board brought Hassan here to do. So let me hand this off to Ray Traynor, and he can give you some more details. Ray?
Thanks, Jim. So for members of the executive committee, I think what you're hearing with Hassan's comments is that we're really at a critical point. I think that if we're to sustain all the progress that Jim talked about and really not lose ground, we're going to have to really think hard about what we're going to do with investment strategy here at the agency. You know, Hassan talked about the assessments that have been done. He referenced the audits that have been conducted, the reviews, many of these things just in the last couple of years. And I think what you're hearing is that just a recurring theme. The results are pointing to the fact that there's a number of recommendations that we just can't ignore. And it's going to cause us to have to think really hard about how to invest in the organization to improve our capabilities. And I think if we don't make this critical set of investments that we're asking for this morning, I think the region, the agency, the board is going to be facing a number of really serious risks. And we have the potential of actually reverting back to maybe the old SANDAG, and that's not a direction that any of us really want to go. When we talk about the new direction, you'll recall that just last month, my colleagues and I came before the executive committee and we talked about the importance of change and evolution. I mean, this is really at the heart of what Hassan has brought as you hired him to come in and transform SANDAG. What we did last month was recap the journey that we've been on over the last couple of years. And this journey is really about how we become more effective as an organization. We share with you the strategic planning framework that we've been using, and that's really all about trying to align all these responsibilities that we have, the myriad of programs, all the projects that we work on, and all the services that we deliver to you as member agencies. And we're connecting all these with the vision of the organization and the mission of the organization. And I think as leaders of the region, you recognize the importance and how critical it is that we be aligned. And that's really going to be, I think, the key to our ability to sustain the kind of forward progress and the performance that we're really trying to talk about here. And so when I talk about the mission and the vision, I want to recall for you the strategic planning framework. And this really gets at the why. This is where the root of our mission and vision take place. And we're using this infinity diagram that we showed you last time to really help you see how every element of our organization, everything we do, begins with the why and it ends with the why. Every component is connected and it's informed by these mission and visions. What I want to do now is just review the draft mission and the vision statements for you. So we'll start with the vision. And what we've articulated with a lot of conversations with yourself over the last couple of years is this vision statement, and that is pursuing a brighter future for all. At the essence, that's what our vision is for the region, a brighter future for all. When we talk about the mission of the organization, the draft mission that we've put together, again, based on a lot of interviews with many of you on the board, we've worked with our stakeholders, we work with our staff, and this really gets at the heart of what SANDAG is all about. So we're the regional agency that connects people, places, and innovative ideas by implementing solutions with our unique and our diverse communities. So to emphasize the importance of this vision and mission statement, we're going to be asking you at the end of this conversation to make a recommendation to move these draft statements to the full board for their concurrence. So why is this so important? Well, the strategic plan that we've been working on for the last couple of years is the roadmap for change that Hassan is talking about. And this positions the organization to be able to address all these current issues that we're facing. And none of these are easy. It also talks about our need to adapt. And what we're finding in conversations with yourself over the last couple of years is that you're asking us to change. Your needs have changed. The region's needs have changed. And if we're going to be able to meet those needs, we're going to have to adapt and better serve the organization. The strategic plan that we're also putting before you really kind of responds to the forces that we've been observing. And these forces are embodied in all the audits. We've been able to illuminate a lot of the forces with respect to the organizational assessment. And really what we're talking about this morning now as we start to talk about the budget is how we're aligning everything in the organization and using the annual program budget now to implement this change. And so Andre is going to step you through at a high level the strategies, the initiatives, and those priority projects that we've been talking about. And that will help you understand what's framing up the draft fiscal year 22 budget that we're going to now step you through. Andre?
Thank you, Ray, and good morning, Executive Committee. So at your last meeting on February 12th, we presented the preliminary information for the draft fiscal year 22 program budget, showing the current funding expectations and the strategic planning framework. So today we will discuss the strategic plan, priority projects, and provide an update on staffing resources and contingency funds. We'll also review the recommended changes to the annual transit apportionments. The proposed budget totaling $1.13 billion utilizes a wide variety of funding sources and is prepared in accordance with FTA and FHWA guidelines, which require submission of a draft to the funding agencies each March. SANDAG bylaws require the draft budget to be considered by April 1st of each year and the final to be approved by June 30th. There are three primary components of the program budget where SANDAG directly manages projects. First, the overall work program, or OWP, which is in chapters 2 and 3, provides an inventory of SANDAG's regional planning and data projects and programs with a total budget of $53 million. Second, the regional operations and services section, which is in chapter 4 and includes all operations related programs and services, such as the SR 125 toll roads, freeway service patrol, and ARGIS programs and services. The total operations budget is $60.3 million. The third major component is the capital program in Chapter 9, which includes the projects approved as part of the transit extension that are currently underway and other regional significant capital investments. Projected capital expenditures are for fiscal year 22 are $686.7 million out of the total capital program of $8.56 billion. Looking at the funding environment, now investments are needed to optimize the agency's technological, data, and modeling resources, support the personnel needed to carry out the agency's mission and priority projects, and fund the independent performance audit activities. In order to provide the agency with the sustainable source of funding necessary to support ongoing and future activities, the fiscal year 22 budget includes a proposed adjustment to the transit ordinance and a one-time use of contingency funds. Now, looking at transit, the board is responsible for administering the transit extension ordinance, which is a 0.5% sales tax and includes certain categories for transit funds, including an administration allocation of 1%. For fiscal year 22, this 1% represents an estimated $3.2 million. Too many years of underinvestment have left SANDAG with a gap between expectations and the agency's ability to deliver on them. We propose to remedy the discrepancy, to shrink the gap and prevent it from growing. As mentioned, our fee is 1% off the top, and we are proposing it go to 2%. The following are a couple examples of other South agency fees. For example, the Fresno County Transportation Authority's Measure C has an admin allowance of 1.5%. Similar to ours, their measure is 0.5% of sales tax collected. Another example closer to us is the Alameda County Transportation Commission currently has two measures, Measure B and Measure BB. Their admin allowances are 4.5% and 4% respectively. One measure is a 0.5% sales tax, the other is a 1% sales tax. So for their Measure BB, they are actually getting in twice the amount of sales tax. And at 4%, that means they are getting 8 more times admin fees than we currently are. And just to put it in dollar terms, if we're collecting the same amount, we're getting 3.2 million right now, they're getting 25.6 million. Must also define what is contained within the admin fee by taking a look at what we did previous versus what we are doing today. Now, I started my career at KPMG as an auditor. One of my very first and biggest clients at the time, going back to 1988, after the first transit ordinance was passed, I actually helped SANDAG staff at the time, led by Wayne Sink, the Director of Finance and Administration at the time, set up the chart of accounts and the financial statements for the commission. Back then, admin meant accounting, compliance, reporting. 33 years later today, admin includes big data, advanced analytics, transparency, complex financial transactions, involved responses to audits, modern systems, performance-based planning and programming. I'll turn it back to Ray to describe what the board and the regional will receive from this investment.
Thanks, Andre. I think a lot of you are probably asking, so what are we asking to be able to do with these reallocation of resources? And I want to be able to point you to a couple of attachments in the agenda in just a second. But as you've heard, we're really talking about addressing a number of areas that have been identified from the previous audits and the organizational assessment. So for example, if you look back at the Transnet 10-year comprehensive review in 2018, the auditors made this suggestion that we would actually reallocate funds from Transnet to be able to enhance all the performance work, the tracking, the monitoring, the analysis, and the work at the regional level. The other thing the auditors identified was that this reallocation of these Transnet funds are really going to help us in respect to doing our performance reporting and our tracking for the Transnet Local Streets and Roads program and the environmental mitigation program. And this is really focused on helping us be more compliant with all the state and the federal performance monitoring requirements, which have been changing over the last years. One of the other areas that the auditors talked about is that in past, we didn't really have any formal data governance. We had no QA processes and no monitoring process to oversee all the data work that we had done. Now, we've made some big steps in the last couple of years, but for us to continue to move this forward, we're really going to need to think seriously about how we reallocate these funds. The most recent Transnet audits have really identified that we've been challenged as an organization to demonstrate our accomplishments and to really talk about outcomes, not just outputs. The Transnet auditors are making a lot of recommendations around the need to set targets. They say that this is really a best practice, and we agree. I mean, this is really important for us to be able to objectively monitor, report in an unbiased manner our performance. And like Andre said, I think when you think about the old use of these admin funds, it was focused on things like compliance, which of course is critical, and transparency. But what the auditors are saying is that we can take it a step further and demonstrate further degrees of accountability to you and to the public that we serve. And part of that comes with improved documentation, improved transparency, improved communications, improved quality control, and the like. But again, additional resources are really going to be needed to accomplish all of these transformational changes. So I referenced a couple of attachments, and I want to just point your attention in the agenda to attachment number 4. That's on page 555. It's a big item. And attachment 5, that's at page 558. And when we ask the question, what are we going to get if we reallocate these funds, it really comes in 5 areas. And attachment 4 talks about all the specific projects where we're proposing to allocate these specific Transnet resources. But those 5 areas are really focused on enhanced performance monitoring, analysis, and reporting. Our whole commitment to equity is another area that needs to be addressed. As Andre talked about, support for the funds management and the pursuit of new funding to be able to leverage the Transnet program funds that are available and take advantage of the new federal and state resources that are becoming available. There's a focus on helping support the work of the auditor, and then all the member agency services and communications that many of you have been asking us to undertake. So we're just going to step through these briefly, but again, I'll refer you to attachment number 4. And when we talk about performance monitoring and all the work that's the auditors and that we're recognizing we need to undertake, we've talked about data for the last couple of years, and the amount of data that we've been able to surface is just enormous. It's incredibly insightful, and we think that it's going to help us really optimize the billions of dollars that we invest in the regional transportation system. But for us to really do a good job with the data, we're going to have to make better use of data science skills, advanced analytics. We're going to have to revise our business processes to be able to better interpret the data. We've got to do a better job with quality control, quality assurance, and data governance. And these are really fundamental if we're going to be a transparent organization. And we've got to be able to demonstrate that we've got good quality process. The other area, when we talk about data and analytics, it's really focused on helping us make practical improvements. The whole bottom line here is that not only the Transnet program performance can be improved, but our whole agency can be improved with better insights in terms of how we're doing at the particular levels of each of our business units. And so measuring outcomes is really underpinned by data. And so this involves things like setting targets, providing monitoring reports, and then, as I mentioned earlier, unbiased reporting. And this work is really not easy. I mean, this is really transformational for us. You heard Hassan, we've really underinvested in the areas around technology and data for years. And so we're going to have to acquire new tools and processes along with the training for our staff to be able to acquire the capabilities to do this. And this is really going to help us propel beyond merely compliance reporting, which again, not to minimize the importance of that, but we've really got to drive more openness and more transparency as we seek to be able to bring the data, use it to illuminate everything we do. Part of this is going to be linked to our plan to develop an open data portal. And this is really critical so that not just SANDAG staff have access to the data, but you as member agencies and members of the public would be able to take a concurrent look at everything that we're bringing. And we think that that just helps improve clarity and it helps improve decision making. Another area that we're talking about making this investment is related to the commitment of equity. And consistent with your recent adoption of the commitment to equity statement, we're really focusing now on bringing an equity lens to everything we do. That's examining our policies, our programs like the Transnet program, all of the projects, our services. And this is really focused now on the need to be able to bring additional resources, the additional expertise and the management to help us remain compliant and to help us propel us forward when it comes to Title VI, environmental justice, helping us with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and all the equal employment opportunity work that we've got to do to be able to bring greater level of analysis and understanding to you as policymakers and to our project managers. So Andre's going to talk about the remaining 3 items that we've proposed with these the use of these reallocated funds. Andre?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. So the third item is to support funds management and pursue new funding opportunities. So we provide support to the region and local jurisdictions with competent financial management of transit program funds and to support continued innovative financing and refinancing activities. But as Jim mentioned earlier, we currently don't have dedicated staff to support the financial management activities of the program. Yes, as CFO, it is my job to go out and be innovative and be creative and do things that other agencies haven't thought of. We went out and after 20 years, we leveraged our FFGA with the federal government and managed to get $330 million of GANS funds. We actually won Bond Buy Deal of the Year for that transaction. Yes, it is my job to convince the TIFIA office to let us refinance our undrawn loan and to be the first in the country to achieve that and save the taxpayers $123 million. But that takes a lot of time, energy, and resources, not only on the front end, but even more on the back end. The financial reporting, compliance, reviews, investor relations, EMA posting, etc. Frankly, we don't have the staff, and I'm straining our finance department to the limit. In fact, I had 2 of my most seasoned transit accounting team members recently resign. They couldn't keep up with our demands. Plus, as funding gets scarcer, we need additional resources to go out and find outside funds to continue to leverage our program. The 4th item, we need resources to support our audits and our OIPA office. Now, SANDAG pursued and was unsuccessful in receiving funding through a state unfunded mandate claim. And as such, agency funds are being allocated from existing core programs to support the ongoing work of the OIPA. Now, besides the resources for the OIPA, we require additional resources for management staff to conduct the audits, and conduct these audits. We require resources for management staff to respond to the audit findings and to implement the recommendations to control the policies. Without this investment, audit findings will pile up and risks will increase. So when you see in the audit budget that there's $1 million for the OIPA, that's not the entire story. It's probably 2 to 3 times that of the cost that we have in management. Now, SANDAG has never undergone this type of ongoing evaluation, must recognize to allocate these resources and to enable the organization to respond, make the necessary changes. Right. Mary, you popped up.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to speak on behalf of this matter from a different perspective, from an audit perspective. I want to share that, according to AB 805, there's a requirement that came out of AB 805 around audits. And it's a requirement that's never existed in the past for SANDAG. SANDAG in its entire existence never had an audit oversight from an internal perspective. So you can only imagine, and inherently at no fault of SANDAG's, when you pull the blankets back and you look in detail, as internal auditors are required to do, we don't look at a narrow scope, we look holistically. And we do that, and an overall, when we do that, it's a benefit to the organization. It brings about efficiencies and effectiveness. And more importantly for SANDAG, it brings about accountability and transparency. Our last audit performed was in fact an audit around really control weaknesses is what it boiled down to. Lack of written policies and proper documentation. All of that takes work and effort. When my office was established, I had minimal resources. The first year it was pretty much just me. Last year I brought to the board and the audit committee full support, a detailed analysis that supported an agency this large needs at least 15 auditors. We currently have 2 auditors and 2 interns. In fact, I just lost another auditor. So you can imagine an already strained resource, and now I've lost 50% of my staff. It's difficult. It's difficult and challenging. So to implement fully AB 805, you have to, from the board level down, have a few things. One is a commitment to change. The other is resources to make that change happen. Without that, it's really going to be a failed and without success. The office is currently doing a contract and procurement audit. We are already finding in our preliminary reviews other control issues. And really what this boils down to is more corrective action plans, just like the first one. And this is a good thing, but it does require not just staff on the audit side to perform these reviews and to look at SANDAG from a holistic standpoint, which external auditors do not do, but it also requires commitment on the side of management. commitment to implement those changes and controls and make them stronger, commitment to write policies and procedures, and commitment to make sure you have sufficient staff, especially in the areas of finance and around other crucial areas that support the whole intent or success of SANDAG, which is more around data and modeling. So it is, from an audit standpoint, important that not only does audits have sufficient staff, but that management is able to carry out those findings and corrective action plans to actually bring about change, efficiency, and effectiveness. And in the end, there is a payoff that's much greater than the cost. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer from an audit standpoint, but I did want to share that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I'll just touch on the last main item, the member agency services that we've been providing. You know, based on feedback from the board members and the results of the strategic planning process, staff has implemented an enhanced member services component of the work that we do to make sure that our board members have all the information they need to make informed decisions on behalf of the region. We're offering briefings to each of our board members in advance of each of our meetings. We also have an organized member orientation this year to help get new members up to speed on many major transit milestones that are coming up this year. So in attachment 5, we show the details of the flow of funds, and if this proposed change is approved by the board, the impact to the various other programs, which in my opinion are very minimal for the overall return to the transit program. As far as the timeline for the board action, section 16 states the commission may, with a 2/3 vote of the commission, amend the ordinance to further its purposes. Should the board wish to amend the ordinance, an amendment would be for board consideration for first and second readings in April and May of 2021. Thereafter, the amendment would take effect 30 days after its passage, would be incorporated in the final fiscal year 22 SANDAG program budget. So that's the Transnet piece. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the contingency funds. Now, looking at the contingency funds, all SANDAG contingency reserves are summarized in Chapter 12 for all the major programs, including the OWP, the regional operations, capital budget, and administrative services. This year, we are proposing the use of $905,000 of the OWP contingency reserve to develop the regional workforce development program, cover COVID-19 expenses, and develop an equity action plan. After using this amount and assuming potential savings of $500,000 in both fiscal year 21 and 22, the reserve will be at 11% of the fiscal year 22 OW budget, exceeding the minimum target of 10% as defined in Board Policy 30. Now, just to look at some of the components of the budget, the fiscal year 22 budget has many work efforts designed to support the agency's initiatives. The administration budget includes funds to advance equity and inclusion with the newly developed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. The modernization of the agency's supporting systems and technology is included in both the administration and capital budgets. And the overall work program includes many data and modeling projects to support the agency becoming a data-driven organization. In fiscal year 22, the agency has identified 5 priority projects. The 2021 regional plan scheduled for adoption in late 21, the Mid-Coast Trolley Project, which will open to the public later this year, Delmar Bluffs Stabilization Effects, Central Mobility Hub, and the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry and State Route 11, which will begin construction of interchange improvements, complete southbound connectors, and finish the traffic and revenue study, which will help us estimate the toll revenue potential. I'll now touch on some of the staffing on our budget. Last year, we eliminated 40 vacant positions in the fiscal year 21 budget as a cost containment measure due to COVID. This became an opportunity to evaluate what positions are necessary going forward. During the past year, and as part of the finalizing the reorganization restructuring effort that began in late 2019, the directors have carefully evaluated staffing resources needed by the agency. The strategic plan, as well as insights gained from the organizational assessment, have informed decision of how to maximize existing positions. A significant amount of positions have been repurposed, and employees have seen an increased number of opportunities for job growth and career advancement within the organization. We're proud of how the SANDAG team has embraced these changes and the improvements we're seeing throughout the agency. Our next step with respect to staffing is to ensure SANDAG has its talent it needs to successfully perform the full range of activities described in the program budget. Staff are proposing that 15 new positions be added in fiscal year 22. 12 of these are core or regular staff positions. The other 3 are considered limited term. Attachment 7 to your budget report briefly describes the position requests. A majority or 7 of the new roles support the data analytics, data science, and modeling areas. 2 positions will support financial planning and project control functions for the delivery of the capital program. 3 positions are being added to the Office of Diversity and Equity to support the creation of workforce utilization programs and to support administration of the DBE program. The remaining new positions include an executive assistant, a management internal auditor for the OIPA office, and a human resource analyst. On the compensation side, SANDAG initiated a salary range study in late 2020. This is one of the actions management committed to undertake in response to the OIPA's compensation audit. The work is being coordinated by the agency's compensation consultant. The study is similar to other conducted in the past. Both public and private sector data will be gathered and evaluated to determine the overall competitiveness of SANDAG salary ranges. The project is due to be completed in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Recommendations from the study, which may include an adjustment to all ranges and reallocation of positions to higher level ranges, will be presented to the board with the final budget in May. On the topic of compensation, the budget proposes 2 different pools of funds for compensation adjustments. The first pool in the amount of 3% would be used to provide performance rewards, merit increases, and/or bonuses to employees. As part attachment 7, we provide an overview of the policy changes and new controls that have been implemented this year to strengthen the oversight and administration of the agency's performance management and compensation program. The staff report also summarizes SANDAG's pay for performance compensation model. Under this type of program, employees progress through their salary ranges via merit-based pay increases, typically awarded on an annual basis. SANDAG does not use STEP program, nor has the agency typically provided across-the-board cost of living increases. As noted earlier, improvements to the overall agency's administration of the agency's compensation program are being implemented. I mentioned 2 compensation adjustment pools have been proposed. The second is amount of 1%. This is an anticipation of recommendations stemming from the salary range, and if approved, would be used to provide base pay adjustments on equity. The total cost of the compensation pool is approximately $1.9 million. This includes salary increases, as well as increases to salary-based benefits such as pension plan contribution, workers' compensation, and Medicare taxes. Specific details, again, are in attachment 7. On the benefits side, SANDAG intends to maintain the employee benefits program in fiscal year 22. Costs related to pension plan contributions, health insurance benefits, workers' comp insurance have increased, and these are reflected in the budget. And as part of the benefits budget, staff has proposed continuation of contributions to the 2 Section 115 exempt trusts. We are currently working on our actuarial consultant and will bring a status of our funded obligation to the board in 2 weeks. So as a summary, as part of our presentation this morning, we have described the need to invest in SANDAG, the benefits to the agency in the region that we serve, a strategic plan for achieving Hassan's vision of becoming a world-class organization. The fiscal year 22 budget is an important step in this process. The work program for the year ahead will help to ensure we can appropriately and effectively respond to recent audits and reviews and demonstrate we are not wasting the public resources. Advance the priority projects and the transit program of projects. Enable us to position ourselves successfully for funding under the reauthorization infrastructure stimulus bills, and empower us to make changes and transform ourselves so we continue to build public trust. So our recommendation, the executive committee is asked to, number 1, authorize distribution of the draft fiscal year 22 program budget to member agencies and other interested parties for review and comment. Number 2, recommend that the board of directors approve the draft fiscal year 22 program budget and propose budget amendments. And lastly, recommend that the Board of Directors approve the draft vision and mission statements. Chair, I will turn it back to you. That concludes our presentation, and we are all available for any questions you may have at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the detailed presentation. I see we have Mayor Jones's hand up, but first I also just want to ask before I go to you if we do have public comments on this.
No, Chair, we don't have any hands up from the public.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mayor Jones.
Thank you. I'm just hoping that we would be able to get a one-page fact sheet that of all of our actions, our costs, our steps, our commitment dates, and expectations, so that we're able to measure also what the probably the underlying data and the assumptions, because this is a lot to go through. I'm not going to pretend that I've gone through everything yet, but I'm just hoping that we could boil it down to a one-page informational. It might be more than one page, but 1 or 2 page. I think you understand my gist. It's so difficult for people to get through, you know, even in the public, to get through all of this information. So I'm hoping that staff would be able to get that done before we see this.
Mayor Jones, I appreciate the fact that there is a lot of information there. And I'm sure that we can, may not be a single page, but we can boil down the succinct points as best we can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Gloria.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for the presentation. Like Mayor Jones, it is a lot to digest. I've made my most valiant attempt at that last night, and appreciate staff's obviously doing the majority of the work to put this together and try and give it in a way that we can consume it. Andre, I know that probably some of the focus is on the overall work program budget change, but the numbers that caught my eye was the capital budget difference between the previous fiscal year and the proposed, or the current fiscal year and the proposed fiscal year. Can you explain the rather sizable reduction in capital projects?
I can start and maybe Jim can finish, but in general, we've been spending a lot of money on the Mid-Coast the last 5 years. This next fiscal year is basically when it winds down and we turn it over to the public. So that's probably the biggest change, is, you know, the dollar cost that we've been paying for the Mid-Coast last several years, and this year it basically tapers off. And Jim, I'll turn it over to you for other comments.
Yeah, Andre, that's exactly right. So Mid-Coast is wrapping up. It's going to open this fall. So not that much money will be spent in next fiscal year 22. The same with North Coast Corridor. North Coast Corridor is going to be wrapping up this calendar year. Before the final last stage will still be going on. But for the most part, the dollars are in the rearview mirror. They've been spent.
And I was hoping that was the case. You might imagine when discussing greater administrative costs, you know, seeing a reduction in output in terms of the capital projects would be a concern. But what you're saying is that we're completing 2 enormous projects that have been in planning for decades, literally, and those are going to be completed at the same time. And kind of getting back to the administrative question, we need staff to be able to, for some of the allocations, to go out and find additional project funding so that we can continue providing projects for the benefit of the public, hence the need to make investments into the way this organization works, into its staff, etc. And I get all that. I think historically I've been impressed by how the 1% off of Transnet and how small it is compared to the spend, right? I think any of us looked at our own city budgets and saw if we had similar numbers, it would be quite favorable, but we don't, right? We understand we have to spend money to provide the work to our residents. So I'm comfortable with the increase. I'd also would point out that some of these increases really I see as the logical conclusion over what has been the last number of years of changes at SANDAG, where we are seeing the public and the state call for a different approach. Staff has undertaken that work by hiring new leadership, hiring outside auditor, changing a number of things internally, not the least of which is data, which we have rightly been held accountable for. And so I see these investments after a period of time of sort of introspection to say, okay, this is how we meet these expectations of the public and of the state to effectuate the responsibilities that we've been given to manage planning and transportation in this region. What I would ask in this regard, though, because it is a sizable amount of money, even if it's small compared to the rest of the budget, it's still a lot of money. I think understand first of all, and I know that iTalk had an opportunity to at least get this as an informational item. I think should this pass the executive committee today, that it would be appropriate to have iTalk have a recommendation before the full board sees it. Is that staff's intent currently?
That's correct, Mayor. We're going to be meeting with the iTalk on a special meeting, we believe next Wednesday, where they're going to dive a little bit deeper into this conversation.
Okay. And this is understandably and appropriately connected to a strategic plan. And I think continuing to keep the board abreast of progress in that regard, so we can track and sort of show how these investments into the organization are paying off in the strategic plan. I know that you do that anyway, but I wanted to just express it here in this forum to be transparent, given that that's what we have been asked to do more of, to link it up to a strategic plan outcomes with regard to commute times, traffic, climate action, et cetera. These would be, I think, a minimum for making these deeper investments into the organization. And then the last thing, this gets to Mayor Jones's comments, which again, I identify with, data is important. Data is really good, right? We forecast really far out. We try and make plans for a variety of factors that the public wants us to do. But it's always a challenge for this agency to translate that into plain speak, not just for board members, but for the general public. Again, if we're in a posture of trying to grow trust with the public, I think that we have to take data, which is often difficult to penetrate, and make it extremely accessible for the board and for the public. I hope that staff will continue to endeavor to do that, not with photography, clip art, or things of that nature, but being able to explain very succinctly what this for that, right? This budget allocation will get this outcome. And with tremendous respect for the work that has been done to date, it is not easy to pull a budget of this size together with this many different funding measures in a public environment. You are doing, I think, the best that you can. And what I'm hearing is that you need help to be able to do this. I see the recommendation today as being in furtherance of that request, and I think it's appropriate to do so. So, Chair, I would be happy to make a motion to advance the recommended actions and encourage the committee's support.
Thank you. So we have a motion.
Sotelo Solis, second.
Okay, and a second, and we have Mayor Boss's hand up. Go ahead, Mayor Boss.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Gloria and Mayor Jones, for your suggestions. I wonder, I would be most comfortable supporting this with one minor change to the language in item 2. Rather than recommend that the Board of Directors approve the draft fiscal year 2022 program budget. I'm not there yet. If we could, if the maker of the motion would be willing to have a slight revision, recommend that the Board of Directors review for possible approval the draft fiscal year 2022 program budget.
I understand your point, Mayor, and I would just ask if staff has any objections. Is there any reasons why we couldn't make that particular action today? A revision, amendment?
So Mayor, and I think Andre can maybe help to provide a response. What we're asking for is for the executive committee to approve and make the recommendation. The board still will consider the budget at its meeting on the 26th, and that would be for the draft budget. Then there's almost a 2-month period where not only the board, but the public gets a chance to review this draft, provide comments to us before we bring it back to you at the end of May for your final approval. So there's actually sufficient amount of time, we believe, on the order of about 2.5 months where all these conversations can take place just under the process that we've currently recommended to you.
Yeah, my concern is I'm not prepared to sit here and recommend that the Board of Directors approve the draft. So that's what I'm struggling with. And I think the minor change in language still allows that process without putting us on record saying, hey, the executive committee approved it and recommended it to the board.
Yeah, could staff just address that directly? What would be the difference for you of that suggestion from Mayor Voss or request?
Mayor, if I could just weigh in, the board has, through Board Policy 1, has delegated certain responsibilities to the executive committee. And one of those responsibilities is to review and recommend the overall work program and program budget. So through that board policy, there is a call on this committee to make a recommendation as to the substance of the budget. The board is already mandated by the bylaws to consider the budget. So regardless of this committee's recommendation of whether the board should or should not consider the budget, they're doing that already. So because of Board Policy 1, I think most consistent with that would be to make a recommendation as to the substance of the budget.
And to add to that, Mayor Blakespear, one of the requirements is for the funding agencies that fund us. The language is important, so we recommend that you consider the language that we suggested to you.
And Chair, if I may, that was my memory of this in times past, that the language of this is critical for our partner agencies who invest in SANDAG. Hassan, can you explain that further? Because I want to accommodate my colleague. I think that, generally some comedy is a good thing to do, particularly if we get a strong vote. But the question of staff was because I believe that this language is critical for people upstream from a funding perspective. Right. And please correct me if I'm wrong, or perhaps educate the committee about what that means.
So every year, annually, we get many different funding sources. Let me take a couple of examples. Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration give us planning funding. When they start thinking of allocating this funding for SANDAG, they have to see exactly what the board is doing. And in this case, the process is the executive committee putting a draft budget out, recommending to the board approval, not pre-guessing what the board is going to do. But it's very important for these agencies to know that we follow the processes so we be considered for funding. So the language is chose carefully to satisfy these planning agencies who's going to allocate funding before July 1st.
I think I understand what you mean. I mean, in deference to Mayor Voss, I'm concerned about what signal it would send if we don't have necessarily unanimous support today. At the same time, I recognize that what I'm hearing staff say is this language is critical for signaling to our financial partners that we are following our process and that we have faith in what staff has put forward, which I do with the same reservations as Mayor Voss, by the way. I mean, ITALC needs to weigh in. We'll have several more weeks of review. I don't think it's too much to ask to recommend this particular action to the board, recognizing that we're recommending to ourselves and we could take a different course of action in a couple of weeks if any of the steps between here and then are unsatisfactory. So Mayor Voss, I appreciate you raising those issues. I hope what you're hearing is I think we're in the same place. I think we may land differently on the language. And like you, I'll reserve my final vote at the board pending additional information from other factors. But I think I'll leave motion as is and we'll see how we do.
Mayor, thank you. I appreciate your willingness to consider it. I think my comments are on the record that I will vote to support it. However, that's for me, it's supporting that the board consider this budget rather than just a blanket approval.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's go ahead and take the vote 1 minute before our next meeting starts.
Thank you, Chair. For the City of San Diego, Mayor Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
For East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Aye.
For North County Coastal, Chair Blakespear.
Aye.
For North County Inland, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
For South County, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you, and that does pass unanimously.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to skip the legislative agenda unless there's a legislative status report, unless there's a real need for that. Is that all right, staff?
Yes.
Totally fine.
Okay, so that concludes our meeting. Our next executive committee meeting is April 9, and I will see you in just a minute over on the other board meeting. So we are adjourned.